Erica was impossible to ignore. That evening, as we drove through the city in her SUV, she was exactly as she always was. Loud, funny, energetic, talking about 10 different subjects within the same conversation. One minute she was discussing Nigerian weddings. The next minute she was complaining about British weather. Then she was telling me a hilarious story about one of her cousins. I spent most of the journey laughing despite myself. She had that effect on people, the rare ability to turn even the most ordinary conversation into a comedy show. Beneath all her humour, however, was something else. A genuine warmth. A sincerity that made people trust her. People naturally gravitated towards Erica. And she knew it. "What exactly is wrong with coming to one party?" she asked dramatically. I laughed. "Nothing." "Then why are you acting like I'm inviting you to climb Mount Everest?" "Because I don't know anyone." "You know me." "I barely know you." She gasped theatrically. "I am deeply offended." I rolled my eyes. She burst out laughing. A few moments later, she glanced sideways at me. "Trust me, Alison." There was something unusually serious in her voice. "Just come." I don't know why. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe fate had already made the decision long before I did. Whatever the reason, I finally surrendered. "Fine," I said. Erica slammed her hand against the steering wheel triumphantly. "Yes!" I laughed. She laughed. Neither of us knew it then. But that simple invitation, that one reluctant yes, would eventually change the course of my entire life. My name is Alison Benjamin Wallace. This is my story titled, "You're Forever in My Heart, Even When I'm Gone." Please like, share, and subscribe to support the growth of our YouTube channel and YouTube family. He kept promising me I would be fine. But how could I be fine when he was lying there in an ICU bed, slipping away from me? That morning, I held his hand as he stared into my face, his eyes blinking slowly, fighting against the weakness taking over his body. Then he tried to say something. His voice was barely audible. He squeezed my hand with the little strength he had left, trying to get my attention. I leaned closer to his mouth. "What is it, Wallace?" I whispered. He struggled again, his lips trembling. Then finally he asked, "Where is Teresa?" My heart dropped. "She's on her way," I lied. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. I saw the disappointment in his eyes immediately. He knew. Wallace always knew when I was lying. After all these years of marriage, he could read my face like scripture. His grip tightened around my hand. For the first time since I entered the ICU room, he turned his face away from me. He was hurt, and I hated myself for it. Wallace had always trusted our marriage, our friendship, our companionship. Once, during one of his company's annual gala nights, he had pulled me aside privately and said, "Alison, I wish you had been my first and only wife." I never forgot that night. My husband was one of the most sincere men anyone could ever meet. Honest, kind, loving, hard-working. And now, in what could be his final moments, I had lied to him. "Oh God, please forgive me," I whispered under my breath. "It wasn't intentional." Then I looked up at Dr. Blakemore, Wallace's best friend, his confidant, his personal doctor for 25 years. The look in his eyes said everything before his mouth did. Dr. Blakemore turned toward the two nurses standing nearby and gave them a quiet nod. They understood immediately and stepped out of the room. The door closed softly behind them. Then he cleared his throat. "Alison," he said gently. I already knew. Still, nothing prepares you for hearing the truth out loud. He folded his arms across his chest, his ID tag dangling from his coat. "I'm so sorry," he continued. "I don't think there's any easy way to say this." My breath caught. "We've done everything we can for your husband. Unfortunately," he paused, his voice heavy, "Wallace is now living on borrowed time." I turned slowly and looked at my husband. He squeezed my hand twice, as if he had heard everything, as if he was part of the conversation. Or maybe he was begging. begging for life, begging for more time, begging me not to let go. I stroked his face gently with my free hand while he held tightly onto the other. "Stay with me, Wallace," I whispered. He tried to smile. I could tell by the faint movement in the muscles around his face, but even his smile looked tired. Dr. Blakemore exhaled quietly. "Anyway, Alison," he said softly, forcing a polite smile, "I have another patient down the corridor. I'll be back shortly. If you need anything, call me." Then he left me alone with my dying husband, and the lie I had just told him. A few years earlier, I had only recently relocated from Australia to the United Kingdom. Everything still felt unfamiliar. The streets, the weather, the accents, the culture. Even after several months, I still found myself comparing everything to my life back in Australia. Life there had been busy, comfortable, predictable. I had friends, a social circle, people who knew me. In the UK, however, things were different. Outside work, my social life was practically non-existent. I had only managed to make a handful of friends, most of whom were colleagues. One of them was Erica. 3 weeks before the party, a group of colleagues had been discussing it during lunch. Everyone seemed excited. People were talking about outfits, transportation, accommodation, and who would be attending. I barely paid attention. Then suddenly Erica turned towards me. "Alison, you should come with us." I smiled politely. "No thanks, Erica." That should have been the end of the conversation. At least that's what I thought. Unfortunately, Erica wasn't the type of person who accepted defeat. Not gracefully, anyway. She was beautiful, bright, witty, smart, and incredibly hardworking. The kind of woman who could dominate an entire room without even trying. A proud British Nigerian woman who carried herself with confidence and charm. She was also impossibly loud and relentlessly friendly. The following day, she appeared at my desk as though our conversation had never ended. "Shopping after work?" she asked casually. I looked up. "Why?" "I need your opinion on a dress." I should have known better. The moment I agreed, she had already won. The shopping trip wasn't really about the dress, it was about the party. Again. And somehow, by the time we finished browsing through several stores, Erica had spent another 2 hours trying to convince me to attend. A week later, she tried again, then again, and again. Eventually, saying no simply became exhausting. Erica was impossible to ignore. That evening, as we drove through the city in her SUV, she was exactly as she always was. Loud, funny, energetic, talking about 10 different subjects within the same conversation. 1 minute she was discussing Nigerian weddings. The next minute she was complaining about British weather. Then she was telling me a hilarious story about one of her cousins. I spent most of the journey laughing despite myself. She had that effect on people, the rare ability to turn even the most ordinary conversation into a comedy show. Beneath all her humour, however, was something else. A genuine warmth. A sincerity that made people trust her. People naturally gravitated towards Erica, and she knew it. "What exactly is wrong with coming to one party?" she asked dramatically. I laughed. "Nothing." "Then why are you acting like I'm inviting you to climb Mount Everest?" "Because I don't know anyone." "You know me. I barely know you." She gasped theatrically. "I am deeply offended." I rolled my eyes. She burst out laughing. A few moments later, she glanced sideways at me. "Trust me, Alison." There was something unusually serious in her voice. "Just come." I don't know why. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe fate had already made the decision long before I did. Whatever the reason, I finally surrendered. "Fine," I said. "So no." Erica slammed her hand against the steering wheel triumphantly. "Yes!" I laughed. She laughed. Neither of us knew it then. But that simple invitation, that one reluctant yes, would eventually change the course of my entire life and lead me to the man whose hand I would one day hold in an ICU room, praying for just a little more time. The first time I saw Wallace was at the party. The party was already in full swing when it happened. Music filled the ballroom. Laughter echoed from every corner. Champagne glasses clinked. People danced. People posed for photographs. People celebrated. And then, suddenly, the energy inside the room shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but noticeably. Almost as if someone had quietly announced the arrival of royalty. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Eyes drifted toward the entrance. Curious, I followed everyone else's gaze, and that was when I saw him, Wallace. The birthday celebrant, 40 years old, 6 feet tall, athletic, handsome, confident without appearing arrogant. His father was British. His mother was half Nigerian and half Italian. The combination had somehow produced a man who looked like he belonged on the cover of a business magazine, or a movie poster, or both. He entered the ballroom dancing, not walking, dancing, surrounded by an equally impressive circle of friends. The entire procession moved through the aisle laughing, greeting guests and soaking in the celebration. Even before anyone explained who he was, I could tell he was important. The room told me. People's reactions told me. The way conversations stopped told me. The way everyone watched him told me. As Erica would later explain, only Nigerians possess the seventh sense. The seventh sense? I asked. The ability to smell wealth and poverty from 3 postcodes away. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my drink. Now, watching Wallace move through the room, I was beginning to understand what she meant. Suddenly, Wallace stopped. He turned, then walked directly towards us. Well, towards Erica. His face lit up immediately. Erica! He hugged her warmly. Thank you for coming. A few of the men walking with him greeted her too. One even stopped long enough to ask about her family. Then they continued moving through the crowd. I stared after them. Who is he? Erica continued dancing. Not small dancing, not subtle dancing, full body dancing. The woman could find rhythm in a fire drill. Which one? She asked. I blinked. There was only one person everybody was staring at. She shrugged dramatically. Still dancing. I was beginning to suspect Erica danced even while asleep. Who is he to you? I asked again. This time she looked directly at me. A slow smile appeared on her face. Are you interested? I stared at her. Seriously, Erica. That wasn't the question I asked. She winked. My mouth literally fell open. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And that was Erica. If you asked her a question, she would never answer it directly. Instead, she would generate an entirely new question. As I would later learn, Nigerians seemed genetically incapable of answering simple questions directly. It had to be an extra strand of DNA, a special national feature, whether fully Nigerian, half Nigerian, or born on another continent entirely. The trait somehow survived. Hours later, the dance floor was packed. Afrobeats thundered through the speakers. People were singing, dancing, or sweating, living. Naturally, Erica was somewhere near the center of the chaos, and somehow she managed to drag me into it. Before I could escape, she suddenly waved someone over. My stomach tightened. Wallace, and several of his friends. They approached, smiling. Wallace, Erica announced proudly. This is Allison. We shook hands. His smile was warm, genuine. The kind of smile that immediately put people at ease. Then Erica added, Oh, by the way, I already knew trouble was coming. She's an SSS. I smiled politely. Wallace smiled. His friends smiled. Everyone smiled. Clearly they understood something I didn't. A few seconds later, Wallace laughed. Then one of his friends laughed. Then another. Only then did I realize I was missing part of the joke. I turned towards Erica. What does that mean? She looked horrified. You don't know? No. Single. She paused dramatically. And. Another pause. Still. Another pause. Searching. The entire group burst out laughing. Oh my God, Erica! I wanted the dance floor to open and swallow me whole. Wallace laughed so hard he nearly dropped his drink. I'm so sorry, he said, but that's actually brilliant. I glared at Erica. She was completely unapologetic. As always, everything was a joke to her. Everything. I once asked her why she was always happy, why she never seemed angry. Naturally, she answered my question with another question. Is the British weather not angry enough for everybody already? I laughed so hard I couldn't breathe. That was Erica. And that night, standing beneath the lights of a crowded dance floor, surrounded by music and strangers, I laughed again. What I didn't know then was that Wallace was watching me. Not because I was the most beautiful woman in the room, not because Erica had embarrassed me, but because, for the first time that evening, he had seen someone completely genuine. And for reasons neither of us could explain. Neither of us forgot that moment. Don't go yet. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the growth of our YouTube channel and YouTube family. Do let us know where you're watching us from. Drop the name of your city and country in the comments section below. A big shout out and thank you for the increasing number of viewership and subscribers, especially from Canada, China, Italy, London, New York, South Korea, Nigeria, South Africa, India, Japan, Jamaica, and Kenya for constantly viewing stories on our channel. Truly appreciated. Welcome to this episode titled The Conversation I Never Saw Coming. The music was still pounding through the ballroom. The dance floor remained crowded. People laughed, sang, danced, celebrated, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Erica had disappeared. Again. I wasn't surprised. Losing Erica at a party was almost guaranteed. She treated social events like a professional athlete treated the Olympics. The woman had stamina. After another hour of standing, smiling, and politely speaking to complete strangers, I slipped away from the crowd. The hotel's outdoor terrace was quieter, cooler, peaceful. Exactly what I needed. The night air brushed against my skin as I stepped outside. London's skyline glittered in the distance. For the first time all evening, there was silence, or at least something close to it. I exhaled, then heard a voice behind me. Escaping already? I turned. Wallace, holding a glass of sparkling water. Not champagne, not whiskey. Water. For some reason that surprised me. He smiled. Please don't tell Erica. I laughed. Tell Erica what? That I abandoned my own birthday party. I smiled. I won't if you won't tell her I disappeared first. Deal. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. Strangely, it felt comfortable. Wallace leaned lightly against the terrace railing. You moved here from Australia? I looked at him. Erica told you that? Erica tells everyone everything. I laughed. That's true. How are you finding London? I thought about it. The weather and I are still negotiating. He laughed. A losing battle? I've noticed. And the people. I smiled. They apologize a lot. We do. Even when things aren't their fault. We definitely do. I laughed. Wallace laughed too. The conversation flowed naturally, effortlessly, like two people who had known each other much longer than a few hours. No awkward pauses, no forced questions, no performance, just conversation. Something about him surprised me. I'd expected someone different, someone more intimidating, more corporate, more serious. After all, he was a self-made millionaire. CEO of a private equity investment company, founder and chairman of multiple businesses, the sort of person business magazines loved featuring. Yet standing there on the terrace, Wallace seemed remarkably normal. Grounded, present, interested, not in himself, in other people, especially tonight. Me. What about you? I asked. What about me? 40. He groaned dramatically. Oh no. What? That sounded painful. I laughed. It wasn't supposed to. It sounded like you were discussing a historical monument. Wallace. I'm serious. You'll survive. Barely. We both laughed, then his expression softened. Honestly. I nodded. I never imagined my life would look like this. The comment caught me off guard. Most successful people spent their time talking about achievements. Wallace sounded reflective, almost thoughtful. What did you imagine? I asked. He stared out towards the city lights. For a long time, I thought success would feel different. Different how? I thought there'd be a finish line. I frowned. There isn't? He smiled. No. His answer was immediate. Certain. The bigger things become, the bigger they keep becoming. The wind moved gently across the terrace. And are you happy? I asked. The question slipped out before I could stop myself. Wallace looked at me. Really looked at me. Not many people ask successful men that question. Most people ask what they do, how much they earn, what they own. I had asked if he was happy. His smile was smaller now, more genuine. Some days, the honesty surprised me. And other days? He shrugged. Other days I remember that money solves problems. He paused. But it doesn't solve loneliness. Something shifted. Not dramatically. Not romantically. Just enough for me to see the man behind the success. The man nobody else in the ballroom seemed to notice. Then suddenly the terrace doors burst open. Found you! Both of us turned. Of course. Erica. Who else? She stood there triumphantly pointing at us, like a detective solving a major criminal investigation. There you are. Erica, I sighed. I leave you alone for 1 hour. It hasn't been an hour. 43 minutes. Wallace burst out laughing. How do you know that? I checked. Of course you did. She marched towards us, then looked from Wallace to me, then back again. A mischievous smile slowly appeared. One I immediately recognized and feared. Oh! No, I warned. Oh! Erica. She folded her arms, smiling like she'd just uncovered state secrets. I see what's happening here. Nothing is happening here. Exactly. She nodded seriously. The first stage is always denial. Wallace laughed so hard he nearly spilled his drink. I covered my face, completely embarrassed. Again, some things never changed, especially Erica. As we walked back into the party together, I remember thinking one thing. Wallace was nothing like I expected, and for some reason, I wanted to know more. What I didn't know then was that Wallace was thinking exactly the same thing. The party ended sometime after midnight. At least I think it did. Honestly, I couldn't remember. What I did remember was Erica singing loudly in her SUV on the drive home. Not singing well, just loudly. Every song became a personal performance. Every chorus became a concert. Every traffic light became an opportunity to dance. By the time she dropped me home, I was exhausted, but strangely happy. The following Monday morning, life returned to normal. Or at least I thought it had. I arrived at work, made coffee, checked emails, attended meetings. Nothing unusual, nothing different. Until lunchtime. I had barely sat down when Erica dropped her tray onto the table opposite me. The smile on her face immediately worried me. I knew that smile. It was never good news. Or perhaps more accurately, it was never peaceful news. What? I asked Erica. What? That smile, Erica. What smile? She'd asked me. The smile you're smiling right now. She laughed. I have information. I sighed. Of course she did. About what? She leaned forward dramatically. No. Erica. No. Erica. She folded her arms. Guess. I closed my eyes briefly. This was exhausting. No. Fine. She looked around theatrically before lowering her voice. Wallace asked about you. I nearly dropped my coffee. What? Her grin widened. I knew it. Knew what? You like him. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I stared at her. Wallace asked about me? She nodded proudly. Asking questions. What questions? Oh, the usual. Erica. He wanted to know how long you've lived in the UK. I blinked. What? And where in Australia you lived. What? And whether you were settling in okay. I stared at her suspiciously. That's all? She looked away, which immediately confirmed it wasn't all. Erica. What? What else? She sighed dramatically. He asked if you were seeing anyone. And? Erica asked. I obviously told him the truth. What truth, Erica? This time I was getting impatient. That you're a player, that you were seeing 5 guys. You told him what? I almost choked. Seriously, Erica shouldn't joke with things like that. Oh, relax. Relax? You're behaving like he proposed marriage. I covered my face. The woman was impossible. Exactly what did you tell him? The truth. I narrowed my eyes. Which truth? The safest truth. That answer worried me even more. Before I could interrogate her further, she suddenly burst out laughing. What? You should have seen his face. What face? The face people make when they're pretending not to be interested. I shook my head. You're making all of this up. I'm Nigerian. What does that have to do with anything? We're experts. At what? Reading people, I laughed. There is no such qualification. There is. There isn't. There is. We both laughed. Eventually the conversation moved on, or at least I thought it had. Until Wednesday. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Hello? Hi. The voice sounded familiar. Very familiar. I couldn't place it immediately. This is Wallace. My heart skipped. Just once. Just enough to annoy me. Oh! Brilliant response, Alison. Oh. Very sophisticated, very intelligent. There was a pause. Then Wallace laughed softly. I'm hoping that's not disappointment. I laughed. No. Good. Another pause. Comfortable. Not awkward, just comfortable. I hope you don't mind me calling. I looked out of my office window. A little surprised. That's fair. Then he said something that caught me completely off guard. I wanted to thank you. For what? The conversation. I frowned. The conversation? On the terrace. I smiled despite myself. Most people spent my birthday talking about business. His voice softened. You talked about life. For some reason that stayed with me. Not because it was romantic, because it was sincere. And sincerity was rare, especially from people who had every reason to be insincere. We talked for nearly 20 minutes about Australia, London, work, travel, books, the weather. And somehow none of it felt forced. Before ending the call, Wallace hesitated, as though deciding whether to ask something. Then finally, would you like to have coffee sometime? Simple, direct, no games, no clever lines, just coffee. I smiled. The funny thing was, I had known the question was coming. Not because Erica had predicted it, because somewhere during the conversation, I'd hoped he would ask. And that realization surprised me more than the invitation itself. Coffee sounds nice, I replied. A smile entered his voice immediately. Good. We agreed on Saturday afternoon. Then the call ended. I sat there staring at my phone, smiling, which was exactly how Erica found me 10 minutes later. She looked at my face and then at my phone, then back at my face. A slow grin appeared. No, I pointed at her. No. What? You know exactly what, she laughed. I haven't said anything. You don't need to. Her grin widened. Was it Wallace? I groaned. She screamed, actually screamed, right there in the office. Several people turned around. I wanted the ground to open. Again. Erica jumped out of her chair and started celebrating as though England had just won the World Cup. He called. Keep your voice down. He called. Erica. He called. I buried my face in my hands. Somewhere in the middle of her celebration, I started laughing too, because for the first time since moving to the UK, I found myself genuinely looking forward to Saturday, and without realizing it, I was already looking forward to seeing Wallace again. Then Saturday arrived far too quickly, or perhaps not quickly enough. I changed outfits 3 times, then told myself I wasn't nervous, then changed outfits a 4th time, which confirmed that I was. Very nervous. Not because it was a date. At least that's what I kept telling myself. It was coffee. Just coffee. Two adults having a conversation. Nothing more, nothing less. Unfortunately, Erica disagreed. Completely. The moment I mentioned my plans, she practically launched an investigation. "What are you wearing?" Erica asked. "A dress, of course." "What kind of dress?" "A normal dress, Erica." I laughed. "What's your problem?" I asked, laughing even more. "There is no such thing as a normal dress when a millionaire is involved," she said, winking her eyes. I laughed. "I'm not dressing for his bank account, am I?" I asked Erica, getting a bit frustrated with her line of questioning. "Good," she said. She nodded approvingly. "Because his bank account is already dressed." "What did you just say?" I nearly spat out my tea. "You're unbelievable, Erica." Sometimes I genuinely wondered how her brain worked. Saturday afternoon finally arrived. The café Wallace had chosen overlooked a small riverside promenade. Elegant, quiet, comfortable, not flashy. Not the sort of place I expected a wealthy businessman to choose. That surprised me. Again. When I arrived, Wallace was already there. Standing. And waiting. I wondered how long he'd been waiting. The moment he saw me, he smiled. Not the polite smile people use. Not the social smile reserved for acquaintances. A genuine smile. The kind that reaches the eyes. And for reasons I couldn't explain, it immediately relaxed me. "Hi, Wallace." "Hi, Erica." For a moment, we simply stood there, smiling. Then we both laughed. "Coffee?" he asked. "Yes, coffee," I responded, and followed behind him as he led the way. Inside, we found a quiet corner table overlooking the river. The afternoon sunlight reflected gently across the water. People walked by outside, couples, families, tourists. The world continued around us. Yet somehow the conversation became our own little world. We spoke for hours, not minutes. Hours. The strange thing was that I couldn't remember who asked most of the questions. The conversation simply flowed, naturally, effortlessly, like it had on the terrace, only deeper, much deeper. Wallace spoke about growing up between different cultures. British, Nigerian, Italian influences from his mother's side of the family. The challenges he had growing up, the advantages, the identity questions. I listened, genuinely interested. Then he asked about Australia, about my family, my childhood, the dreams I'd had before moving to the UK, the disappointments, the risks, the reasons I'd started over. And unlike many people, he listened, really listened with keen interest, not waiting for his turn to speak, listening. I found myself telling him things I rarely discussed. Nothing deeply personal. Not yet, but enough to surprise myself. At one point, he suddenly laughed. "What?" "You know what's interesting?" "What?" "You never ask me about money." I blinked. "Should I?" "No." He smiled. "Please don't." I laughed. "Would it shock you if I said I find balance sheets incredibly boring?" "Honestly?" "Honestly, it would." We both laughed. Then Wallace leaned back in his chair. "You know something?" "What?" "It's refreshing." I tilted my head. "What is?" He looked directly at me. "This." I didn't speak. Neither did he for a few seconds. Then he continued. "You don't seem interested in impressing anyone." The comment caught me off guard. I looked away briefly, then smiled. "That's because I'm too busy trying to survive British weather." He laughed, loudly, for the first time all afternoon. A genuine laugh, the kind that turns heads. Several people looked over. Neither of us cared. Hours passed. Coffee became lunch. Lunch became dessert. Dessert somehow became another round of coffee. At one point, Wallace checked his watch and looked genuinely shocked. "We've been here nearly 5 hours." I looked too. He was right. 5 hours. 5 hours that had felt like 50 minutes. As we eventually stepped outside, the afternoon had begun fading into evening. The riverside lights slowly flickered on. The city looked beautiful. For a few moments we walked in silence. Not awkward silence, comfortable silence. The kind shared between people who no longer feel pressure to fill every second with words. Then Wallace stopped walking. I turned towards him. He looked unusually thoughtful. What? He smiled. I had a really good time today. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. So did I. His smile widened slightly. Something changed in his expression. Not dramatically, just enough, as though he had reached a decision. I'm glad Erica invited you to my birthday. I laughed. I almost didn't come. I know. She practically kidnapped me. Then I owe Erica a thank you. I smiled. You definitely do. Wallace nodded thoughtfully. Maybe flowers. I laughed. Don't encourage her. We both stood there smiling. Neither of us seemed eager to leave. And for the first time since meeting him, I allowed myself to acknowledge something. I liked Wallace. Not because of his success. Not because of his money. Not because everyone else seemed impressed by him. I liked him because when I was with him, I felt completely like myself. No performance. No pretending. No pressure. Just me. Then Wallace spoke. Can I see you again? Simple, direct, sincere, just like the first time. I smiled. Yes. His smile answered before his words did. Good. We stood there another moment, neither wanting to be the first to leave. Eventually we said goodbye, then walked in opposite directions. I had barely reached the end of the promenade when my phone vibrated. A message from Erica. How did it go? I stopped walking, stared at the screen, then laughed. The woman was unbelievable, I typed back. It went well. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then her reply arrived. Translation, she likes him. I shook my head, smiling, because for once, Erica was absolutely right. And somewhere across London, although I didn't know it then, Wallace was smiling too, for the first time in a very long time. Neither of us felt quite as lonely as we had before. Saturday's coffee date ended, but Wallace didn't leave my thoughts. And that annoyed me, slightly. A lot. Maybe. By Monday morning, I found myself smiling at random moments, then immediately scolding myself. You had 1 coffee date, Alison. 1. Not a marriage proposal. Not an engagement. Coffee. Yet somehow that simple explanation wasn't helping, because every time my phone buzzed, I looked. Every single time. Which was ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. By Tuesday afternoon, I was standing beside the huge office window overlooking Canary Wharf when my phone finally rang. My heart reacted before my brain did. Wallace. I smiled immediately, then frowned at myself for smiling immediately, then answered. Hi, Wallace. Hi, Alison. His voice sounded warm, comfortable, familiar. The strange thing was that we'd only known each other a few weeks, yet somehow talking to him already felt easy. Am I interrupting? He asked. No. Good. I laughed. What? I don't know. You laughed. You sounded relieved. I was. That surprised me. There was no hesitation in his answer. No attempt to hide it. Just honesty. I've been looking forward to calling. I felt my cheeks warm. Thankfully, he couldn't see me. The conversation started innocently enough. Work, the weather, the traffic, London, nothing important, and somehow everything important. 40 minutes disappeared, just like that. At one point, Wallace suddenly said, You mentioned something during coffee. I frowned. I did? You said you've never properly explored Greenwich. I blinked. Honestly, I'd forgotten saying it. You remember that? Of course. The answer came so naturally, so casually, as though remembering things people told him was normal. Perhaps it was. For him. Would you like to go this weekend? I smiled. Greenwich? Greenwich. I'd like that. Good. Something about the way he said good made me smile even more. The call ended shortly afterwards, and for several moments I simply stood there staring at my phone, smiling. Again, unfortunately, I wasn't alone. You've got that look. I nearly jumped. Erica stood behind me holding a coffee cup, watching me, suspiciously. What look? The Wallace look. There is no Wallace look. There is. There isn't. There definitely is. I laughed. Erica folded her arms triumphantly. He called. I didn't answer, which was apparently all the confirmation she needed. He called. Again. Silence. He definitely called. I sighed. He called. The celebration that followed was completely unnecessary and entirely predictable. Erica raised both hands in victory. Phase 2. There is no phase 2. There is. There isn't. There is. She pointed dramatically at me. You smiled. People smile. Not like that. I laughed despite myself. Then Erica narrowed her eyes. What did he say? Nothing. What did he say? We talked. About? Things. She stared at me. That is the most suspicious answer you've ever given. I burst out laughing. The woman was impossible. Absolutely impossible. Later that evening, I arrived home exhausted. I kicked off my shoes and made tea, curled up on the sofa, and stared out of the apartment window. The city lights sparkled below. London looked beautiful, different, smaller somehow, less lonely. My phone buzzed. A message from Wallace. Hope your meeting went well. That was it. Nothing dramatic, nothing romantic. Just a simple message. Yet, I found myself smiling again. Because he'd remembered. The meeting I'd mentioned earlier. A tiny detail. One of hundreds. Yet somehow he'd remembered. I typed back. It did. Thank you. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then another message. Good. I was curious. I laughed quietly. Curious. Such an ordinary word. Yet somehow it made me feel warm inside. For several moments I stared at the conversation, then at the city beyond my window. And finally admitted something to myself. Something I'd been avoiding. I looked forward to hearing from Wallace. Not because he was successful, not because he was wealthy, not because he was impressive, but because when he called, my day genuinely became better. And that realization was far more dangerous than attraction, because attraction fades. But happiness has a way of finding a permanent place in your heart. As I set my phone down beside me, I smiled. For the first time since moving to the United Kingdom, London no longer felt quite so large. And for reasons I was not yet ready to admit, I suspected Wallace had something to do with that. Saturday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine. A rare British miracle. The sort of weather that caused people across the country to abandon all responsibilities and rush outdoors. I was standing in front of my bedroom mirror for the 5th time, possibly 6th, not that I was counting. The bed behind me was covered in discarded outfits, evidence of poor decision-making and mild panic. I stared at my reflection, then laughed at myself. This is ridiculous. 1 date. 1. Why was I behaving like a teenager? My phone buzzed. A message from Erica. Of course. What are you wearing? I rolled my eyes. Clothes. The reply arrived immediately. Suspicious answer. I laughed. Goodbye, Erica. Send photo. No. Send photo. No. Send photo. I ignored her. Then immediately received. Phase 2 requires transparency. Honestly, the woman needed supervision. By midday, I was standing outside Greenwich Station. The sunshine reflected across the historic buildings. People walked past carrying coffees, families, tourists, cyclists. The entire area felt alive. Then I spotted Wallace, standing near the entrance. White shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, dark sunglasses, hands casually in his pockets. Relaxed, effortlessly confident, and annoyingly handsome. The moment he saw me, he smiled. Not the smile people wore for photographs. The real one. The one I'd started recognizing. Hi. Hi. For a second, we simply stood there smiling. Again. Then both laughed. Again. This is becoming a habit. What is? The awkward smiling. I laughed. Maybe. I like it. The honesty caught me off guard. Again. Somehow Wallace kept doing that. making simple statements sound important, without trying. The afternoon unfolded naturally. No agenda, no schedule, no pressure, that just walking, talking, exploring Greenwich Market, the riverside, historic streets, little cafes, bookshops, the observatory grounds. Hours passed. Neither of us seemed to notice or care. At one point, we sat on a bench overlooking the Thames. The river moved lazily beneath the sunshine. Boats drifted past. Children laughed nearby. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The silence felt comfortable, safe. Wallace broke it first. "Can I ask you something?" I looked at him. "Of course." He hesitated. Not long, just enough. "What made you move?" The question felt different, deeper, more personal. I looked towards the river, thinking. Honestly? Honestly. I wanted a fresh start. He nodded quietly. No interruption, no judgment, just listening. My life in Australia wasn't bad. I smiled softly. It just wasn't the life I imagined. Wallace looked at me. Understanding. The kind that comes from experience, not sympathy. Experience. I know that feeling. The words came quietly, almost thoughtfully. I turned towards him. For the first time that day, his expression looked different, less playful, more reflective. "What about you?" He laughed softly. "And what about me? Was this the life you imagined?" For several seconds, Wallace didn't answer. He watched the river, then smiled. "No." The answer surprised me. "Really?" "No." He shook his head. "I thought success would solve everything." His voice remained calm. Matter of fact. No arrogance and no self-pity, just honesty. "And?" He smiled. "It solved some things." I laughed. "That's not exactly a ringing endorsement." "It isn't supposed to be." We both laughed. Then his smile softened. "The truth is..." He paused, as though carefully choosing the words. "I spent so many years building businesses." His eyes drifted towards the water. "I forgot to build a life." The sentence landed quietly, but heavily. For the first time, I saw something beneath the confidence. The wealth, the success, the reputation. Loneliness, not dramatic loneliness, not tragic loneliness. The quieter kind. The kind successful people often hide well. For some reason, I wanted to reach for his hand. I didn't, but I wanted to. The afternoon became evening. The sky slowly turned golden. The Thames shimmered beneath the fading sunlight. Neither of us seemed eager for the day to end. Eventually, we found ourselves walking along the riverside, side by side, close enough that our shoulders occasionally brushed, neither moving away, neither acknowledging it. Then Wallace suddenly stopped. I turned. "What?" He smiled. "You know something." "What?" "I had a really good day." The simplicity of the statement made me smile. So did I. His eyes held mine, just a little longer than before. The air felt different suddenly, quieter, smaller. As though the entire world had stepped back for a moment. Then Wallace laughed. "What?" I was trying to think of a clever way to say this. I smiled. "And? I'm terrible at clever." I laughed. "Go on." His smile widened. "I'd like to see you again." Simple, direct, sincere. Exactly the way he'd asked before. And somehow that made it even more meaningful. Because Wallace never seemed interested in games, just honesty. I'd like that too. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The smile that appeared on his face told me everything. And for reasons I couldn't explain, my heart felt lighter than it had in a very long time. That evening back at home, I received a message. Not from Wallace, from Erica. "How was Greenwich?" I stared at the screen, smiling. Then replied, "It was wonderful." 3 dots appeared. Then, translation, phase 3. I burst out laughing, alone in my apartment, at nearly 11 o'clock. Like a crazy person. Then another message arrived. "I'm updating the relationship progress report." I shook my head. Somewhere in London, Wallace was probably smiling too. And somewhere else, Erica was undoubtedly preparing a presentation on our future. The terrifying thing? For the first time, I wasn't entirely convinced she was wrong. Then Monday morning arrived with rain. Of course it did. Because Britain has an unspoken rule that every beautiful weekend must be punished by Monday weather. I was standing beside my desk looking out across Canary Wharf when my phone vibrated. A message from Wallace. I smiled immediately, then looked around to make sure Erica wasn't nearby. I had become cautious. For good reason. The woman could smell happiness from 3 floors away. I opened the message. Good morning. Simple. 3 words. Yet somehow they made me smile. Then another message appeared. I hope your Monday is behaving itself. I laughed quietly. My fingers moved across the screen. It's trying its best to ruin my mood. His reply arrived seconds later. That's unfortunate. I was hoping to take credit for improving it. I shook my head, smiling. Again. Unfortunately. Erica chose that exact moment to appear, holding coffee. Naturally, like a detective arriving at a crime scene. She slowed down, narrowed her eyes, then looked from me to the phone, back to me. Oh! I immediately sighed. What? Oh! Erica, she pointed dramatically. The smile. What smile? The Wallace smile. There is no Wallace smile. There absolutely is. I laughed. She took a sip of coffee. You've reached the stage where you're smiling at messages. People smile at messages. Not like that. I shook my head. The woman was exhausting, and unfortunately, almost always correct. The week passed quickly, calls became normal, messages became normal. Wallace had somehow become part of my day. Without either of us discussing it, without either of us planning it, it simply happened, the way the best things often do. Thursday afternoon. My phone rang. Wallace. Hi. Hi. His voice immediately made me smile. Again. This was becoming a serious problem. What are you doing? He asked. Working. That's disappointing. I laughed. Why? I was hoping you'd say something more exciting. Like what? I don't know. I smiled. Then Wallace suddenly cleared his throat, almost nervously, which surprised me. Wallace never sounded nervous. Can I ask you something? Of course. There was a pause. Just long enough for my curiosity to grow. Then he said, My company is hosting a charity gala next month. I listened quietly. And? And I was wondering. Another pause. Then finally, would you come with me? For a moment, I forgot how to speak. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was unexpected, because it felt important, different. A step forward, the sort of invitation people only extend when they genuinely want someone beside them. Not just present, beside them. I smiled. Are you asking me on a date? He laughed. Possibly. Possibly? Definitely. I laughed. So that's your final answer? That's my final answer. I looked out towards the rain-covered skyline, then smiled. I'd love to. The relief in his voice was immediate and strangely adorable. For a successful businessman worth millions, Wallace suddenly sounded like a teenager asking someone to prom. That evening, I arrived home, made tea, curled up on the sofa, and stared out at London. The city sparkled beneath the darkness, beautiful, quiet, endless. My phone buzzed. A message from Erica. Did Wallace invite you somewhere? I nearly dropped my tea. Immediately I called her. How do you know these things? She laughed so hard she could barely speak. I don't know. You're lying. I am. Erica. I have sources. I burst out laughing. You do not. I absolutely do. You have no sources. She lowered her voice dramatically. Phase 4, Intelligence Unit. I laughed so hard tea nearly came out of my nose. The woman was impossible. Completely impossible. Later that night, after we'd both hung up, after the city had gone quiet, after the messages stopped, I found myself staring at the invitation again. The charity gala. One evening. One event. Nothing extraordinary, yet somehow it felt significant, because Wallace wasn't inviting me into his schedule. He was inviting me into his world. And perhaps for the first time, I realized I wanted to be there. The invitation sat on my kitchen counter for almost a week, not because I wasn't excited. I was. Very excited. The problem was something else. I had absolutely nothing to wear. Nothing. At least according to me. And according to Erica. That was nonsense. You own dresses. I hate all of them. You wore one 3 months ago. That's exactly the problem. Erica stared at me, then sighed dramatically. The man owns a private equity company. I nodded. He won't remember what dress you're wearing. I nodded again. He'll remember you. I paused, then looked at her. For once, the woman wasn't joking. The charity gala arrived on a Friday evening, and somehow I was more nervous than I had been before our first coffee date. My apartment looked like a department store explosion. Shoes, dresses, jewelry, and handbags, everything. Everywhere. Eventually, I settled on a navy blue evening gown. Simple, elegant, nothing flashy. Just me. At least I hoped so. At exactly 7 o'clock, my phone rang. Wallace. I'm downstairs. My stomach immediately performed gymnastics. I stepped out of the building, and there he was, standing beside a black luxury sedan. Dark suit, white shirt, no tie. Relaxed, effortlessly confident. The moment he saw me, he stopped moving, completely, for several seconds. Just stared. My heart skipped. Then Wallace smiled, the genuine smile, the one I loved most. You look beautiful. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, not exaggerated, just sincere. I felt my cheeks warm. Thank you. His eyes remained on me. For a second longer, then he opened the car door. And suddenly I understood why women wrote songs about simple gestures. The gala was being held inside one of London's most prestigious hotels, the sort of place where the chandeliers probably cost more than houses. As we entered the ballroom, everything slowed. Investors, business leaders, politicians, celebrities, executives. The room was filled with people whose names regularly appeared in newspapers. I immediately felt out of place. Wallace seemed to notice, because he quietly leaned closer. You okay? I nodded, just overwhelmed. His smile softened. Don't be. Easier for you to say. Why? I laughed. Because everyone knows who you are. Wallace looked around the room, then back at me, and said something I never forgot. That's not why I brought you. The words landed softly, but powerfully. For a moment the noise disappeared, the room disappeared, everything disappeared, except him. The evening unfolded beautifully. Wallace introduced me to people, not as an accessory, not as a guest, not as someone he happened to know, but as Alison. The way he said my name made me feel important, valued, seen. Again and again people approached him. Yet somehow he never drifted far away, never left me feeling abandoned, never forgot I was there. Later that evening, after speeches, after dinner, after endless conversations, we escaped, quietly. Out onto the balcony overlooking London. The city stretched endlessly beneath us. Millions of lights, millions of stories. The night air felt cool against my skin. For several moments, neither of us spoke. The silence felt familiar now. Comfortable, safe. Wallace leaned against the railing. I've been looking forward to tonight. I smiled. Really? Really? I laughed softly. You see these people every day. I'm not talking about them. The answer came immediately, without hesitation. His eyes met mine, and suddenly my heart forgot how to behave. Again. For a moment, neither of us looked away. The city sparkled below. The music drifted softly from the ballroom behind us. And for the first time, the space between us felt different, smaller, warmer, more dangerous. Not because anything happened, because something almost happened, and somehow that felt even more powerful. Eventually, Wallace laughed quietly. What? I'm trying very hard to behave. I burst out laughing. His smile widened. Good. Why? Because so am I. Neither of us explained. Neither of us needed to. When he drove me home later that night, London seemed quieter, the streets emptier, the journey shorter. And when we finally arrived outside my building, neither of us seemed eager to say goodbye. Again, a pattern was forming. I had a wonderful evening. His smile appeared immediately. So did I. Then silence, and then smiles. Again. Then more silence, and somehow neither felt awkward. Finally, Wallace spoke. Can I see you next weekend? I laughed. You know the answer already. I do. Then why ask? His grin widened. Because I like hearing you say yes. My heart melted. Completely. As I walked back towards my apartment entrance, I turned around once. Wallace was still there, watching, smiling. The moment our eyes met, he waved, and suddenly I found myself smiling like an idiot. Again. That night, lying in bed, I replayed the evening over and over. The ballroom, the balcony, the conversation, the way he looked at me, the way he said my name, the way he never made me feel small in a room full of powerful people, and somewhere between those thoughts, a realization quietly arrived. I wasn't just falling for Wallace, I was beginning to trust him, and that was infinitely more dangerous. Don't go yet. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the reach and the growth of our YouTube channel, and of course the growth our YouTube family. Do let us know where you're watching us from. Drop the name of your city and country in the comments section below. Welcome to this episode titled, The Way He Held My Hand. The machine began beeping before I understood what was happening. At first it was only one sharp sound, then another, then several at once. A violent rhythm that tore through the silence of Wallace's ICU room. I looked up immediately. Wallace? His body moved suddenly beneath the sheets. Not much, just enough to terrify me. His chest rose unevenly, then fell, then rose again, harder this time, like breathing had become a battle his body was too tired to fight. Wallace? I repeated louder now. His eyes moved beneath his lids. His mouth opened slightly around the tube. A strange sound escaped him, not a word and not quite a cough, something worse, a desperate struggle for air. My heart stopped. Help! I screamed. Somebody help me! The door burst open almost instantly. 2 nurses rushed in first, then another, then Dr. Blakemore. Everything became movement. Urgent voices, gloved hands, machines, medication. A nurse gently but firmly moved me back. Mrs. Blakemore, please step aside. No, my voice broke. No, please, I'm not leaving him. We're not asking you to leave, she said quickly. Just give us space. I stumbled backwards. My hands were shaking. The machines kept beeping. Dr. Blakemore leaned over Wallace, calm but focused. Wallace, stay with us, he said firmly. Come on, my friend. My friend. The words broke something in me. Because Wallace was not just a patient in that room. He was someone's friend, someone's husband, someone's entire world. My entire world. One of the nurses adjusted the oxygen. Another checked the lines attached to his chest. Dr. Blakemore gave instructions I could barely understand. All I could hear was the beeping. All I could see was Wallace gasping. And all I could think was, this is it. This is the moment. This is how I lose him. No, I whispered, then louder. No. My legs weakened. I gripped the side of the chair beside me, trying not to collapse. Please, God, I whispered. Not yet, please, not yet. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. Time lost meaning inside that room. Then, slowly. The beeping changed. The frantic rhythm softened. The chaos reduced. The nurses stopped moving so quickly. Dr. Blakemore looked at the monitor, then at Wallace, then finally at me. He's stable, he said quietly. Stable. One word. one fragile word. I almost fell apart. A sob escaped my throat before I could stop it. The nurses remained for another few moments, checking everything twice before slowly leaving the room. Dr. Blakemore stayed behind. His eyes were tired, kind, devastated. "I'm sorry, Alison," he said softly. "These episodes may happen again." I nodded, though I barely heard him. My eyes were fixed on Wallace. His face looked pale, exhausted, but alive. Still here, still mine. Dr. Blakemore touched my shoulder gently before leaving. The door closed behind him. And once again, it was just the two of us. I moved back to the bed on trembling legs, then sat carefully beside him. His hand lay open against the sheet, weak, still. I took it between both of mine. "Wallace," I whispered. His fingers moved. Barely. Then slowly, with the little strength he had left, he squeezed my hand. Once, gently. My tears fell immediately. "Oh, Wallace." His eyes opened slightly. Not fully, just enough. And then I saw it. That faint smile, the smallest movement at the corner of his mouth. A smile that looked like pain, like apology, like love. I broke. "Please," I whispered, pressing his hand to my lips. "Please, Wallace, stay with me." His fingers tightened again. Not much, but enough. Enough for me to know he heard me. Enough for me to know he was still fighting. Enough to remind me of another night, another car, another version of us. A version of Wallace who held my hand not because he was dying, but because he didn't want me to go. It was after a wedding. One of his friends from university. A beautiful, expensive wedding in Surrey, held inside a country estate with gardens so perfect they looked unreal. The bride wore lace. The groom cried during his vows. Erica, of course, danced as though the reception had been organised specifically for her. By the time Wallace drove me home that night, my feet were aching, my makeup had softened, and I had laughed more than I had in months. We were both tired, but happy. The kind of happy that made silence feel full. His SUV pulled up outside my apartment just after midnight. The street was quiet. London had softened into that strange late-night calm where even the traffic seemed to whisper. Wallace switched off the engine. Neither of us moved. For a few seconds we simply sat there. Then he laughed softly. "What?" I asked. "I was just thinking." "That sounds dangerous." He smiled. "It usually is." I turned slightly in my seat. "Thinking about what?" "The wedding." I smiled. "It was beautiful." "It was." The silence returned. Not awkward. Never awkward with Wallace. He rested one hand loosely on the steering wheel and looked ahead through the windscreen. "Do you believe in marriage?" he asked. The question surprised me. I looked at him. "That's a big question for 1 o'clock in the morning." "It's 12:43. I laughed. "Thank you for the correction." "You're welcome." I shook my head, smiling. Then I thought about his question properly. "Yes," I said eventually. "I do." He looked at me. "Even after everything people say about it?" "Yes." "Why?" I looked out at the quiet street. "Because I think marriage itself isn't the problem." He waited. "People are." Wallace laughed softly. "That's very honest." "It's true." "I think so too." I looked back at him. "What about you?" He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I believe in companionship." That answer stayed with me. Not romance, not status, not performance. Companionship. "Is that different from marriage?" I asked. "It can be." "How?" He turned towards me. "Some people are married but not companions." I said nothing, because I knew he was right. He continued, his voice quieter now. "I've seen people share a house but not a life." Something in his expression changed. Not sadness exactly. Something close to it. A memory, perhaps. Or regret. I didn't ask. "Not then." Instead, I said, "I think companionship is what makes love survive ordinary days." Wallace looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. That might be the best definition I've heard. I laughed. Feel free to quote me. I probably will. We talked after that, about the wedding, about family, about expectations, about the strange pressure people put on love once it becomes public. One conversation became another, then another. The minutes disappeared. The clock on the dashboard moved from 12:43 to 1:20, then 2:05, then 2:46, and still neither of us left. At some point I removed my heels. Wallace laughed. I'm taking that as a sign you're comfortable. My feet are negotiating freedom. Should I be concerned? Only if you plan to keep me here until sunrise. He looked at me, then smiled. I wouldn't complain. The words were soft, almost playful, almost not. My heart did something foolish. I looked down quickly. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Wallace always noticed. For a while we sat in a silence that felt louder than conversation. Then, slowly, Wallace moved his hand from the center console. Not quickly, not boldly, just gently, carefully, as though giving me time to move away. I didn't. His hand settled over mine, warm, steady, familiar even though it was new. I looked down at our hands, then up at him. He wasn't smiling now, and not really. He was looking at me with an expression I had no name for. Not desire alone, not affection alone. Something deeper, something that frightened me because it felt honest. I like being with you, Alison, he said. My breath caught. I like being with you too. His thumb moved gently across the back of my hand. I know I should let you go inside. Probably. Neither of us moved. He smiled. Probably is a very flexible word. I laughed quietly. It is. Another silence. Closer this time. Warmer. The world outside the SUV felt far away. Then Wallace leaned slightly closer. Still giving me space. Still giving me choice. Always Wallace. Always careful. Alison. The way he said my name made my chest ache. Yes? He looked at my mouth, then my eyes. Can I kiss you? The question undid me. Not because I didn't expect it, because he asked. Because he didn't take. Because even in desire, he remained gentle. I nodded. Yes. The kiss was soft, slow, beautifully uncertain. As though both of us were afraid of breaking something precious. His hand remained over mine. My eyes closed, and the entire world reduced to Wallace. The warmth of him, the quiet of the street, the softness of his mouth, the feeling that something important had just begun. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us spoke. Wallace rested his forehead lightly against mine, then laughed under his breath. What? I whispered. I've wanted to do that for weeks. I laughed too. Weeks? Yes. That's very patient of you. I was trying to behave. You say that a lot. Only around you. My heart melted in a way I didn't know hearts could. Eventually he walked me to my door. My heels dangled from one hand. His jacket rested over my shoulders. At the entrance, we stood facing each other like two people who had already said goodbye but didn't know how to leave. Good night, Alison. Good night, Wallace. He kissed my forehead, then my hand, then stepped back before either of us changed our minds. I watched him walk back to the SUV. He turned once, smiled, then got in. And as he drove away, I stood there barefoot in my doorway, holding my shoes, wearing his jacket, and smiling like a woman whose life had just quietly changed. Back in the ICU, Wallace's hand was still in mine. Older now, weaker, fragile, the same hand that had rested over mine in his SUV. The same hand that had held mine outside my apartment. The same hand that had once made me feel chosen without saying a word. I looked at him through my tears. Do you remember? I whispered. His eyes remained closed, but his fingers moved again. Barely. A faint squeeze. My breath broke. Maybe he remembered. Maybe he only heard my voice. Maybe love had its own memory even when the body was failing. I leaned closer and rested my forehead near his hand. "Stay with me," I whispered again. The machines continued their steady rhythm around us. Beep, beep, beep. Wallace lay still, but his hand remained in mine. And years after that first kiss, after all the laughter, after all the promises, after everything life had given us and everything it was now trying to take away, Wallace was still holding on. This is just the beginning. Watch out for our next episodes. Don't go yet. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the growth of our YouTube channel and YouTube family. Do let us know where you're watching us from. Drop the name of your city and country in the comments section below. A big shout out and thank you for the increasing number of viewership and subscribers, especially from Canada, China, Italy, London, New York, South Korea, Nigeria, South Africa, India, Japan, Jamaica, and Kenya for constantly viewing stories on our channel. Truly appreciated.